Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Literacy View. We have a very special guest with us tonight. We have John Stallcup, and this is not our typical guest. John is a consultant, he's an author, and he's all about helping businesses create success. And you know what? Education is a business, and we should look at it that way because we should be all about success. And our guest that we're having today knows a lot about AI. He's very up on education. He had to be. He was on top of his children's education, very involved. And we're going to be discussing an article that just came out recently. It was written by David Didow or Didow. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his last name, but I've known his work for years. He's been on X, Twitter, and I always read his work. He's fantastic. And his latest article was in Substack. The Dyslexia Miracle School is no model for the masses. And this is a very interesting article because it talks about a school, a private school that has a lot of success with children with dyslexia. And we just had an episode about AI with Dr. Coral Ho. And you might wonder, well, how is that related? But the truth is, we have a school that only maybe privileged kids could go to because it costs quite a bit of money. And then we have AI, a solution that perhaps could really help lots of kids. So John's going to talk to us a little bit about why he feels and evidence behind AI and some ideas that he has about this article. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
So, John, tell us a little bit about your background and what your reaction was when you read this article about a school that gets quite good results for students with dyslexia. And yet, you know, most kids aren't going to be able to be the recipients of such great teaching. So could you tell us a little bit about how you got into education and some of your thoughts?
Well, I've been focused on education mostly since I had children. My grandmother taught for 50 years, mostly on the Navajo reservation where I spent my summers with her. But when I started looking at education, my question was, who runs the most effective education system in the world and how do they do that? Well, back in 93, 94, that was Japan and Singapore. So I've been kind of focused on how they do things. And then over the years, I had to mitigate some things for my kids. So I discovered Head Sprout, which was a online kindergarten through, it's actually early phonics through early reading program that was invented by a behavioral psychologist who was hired by Steve Jobs to write the directions to get the Mac out of the box and working in 20 minutes. So he didn't take the approach of what you typically think of somebody to do early phonics, early reading. It was so effective, they guaranteed it worked. Didn't work, you got your money back. It was 150 lessons. It subsequently got acquired. I actually spent time with the founder. So that my journey has always been to find something that works to scale, that doesn't cost billions of dollars, that's measurable. By that I mean you don't have confounding variables like you do with, not to get controversial, but reading recovery's approval from what works was based on 230 some odd kids in 12 states, which wouldn't pass anybody's statistics course for reliable, valid data. So what I liked is when you have something like DISOLVE, the Coral Ho's dyslexia program, is it's relatively autonomous. You have data that you can project over large sample sizes, so you can actually understand whether it works or not. Now, the reality is these kind of programs are discrete, domain specific. What I mean by that is you're not trying to teach kids calculus. You're taking an area of need. In the case of one of my children, it was she went through Lucy Calkins and got way behind. And so this got her caught up because it wouldn't go to the next lesson. You did one lesson a day. It's almost the Kumon math lesson. You don't go to the next lesson until you can do this one perfectly and fast. And that works. That's one reason of the biggest.
Yep. Yeah. So you know what? I just want to kind of stop right there because you said a lot of things right there. You talked about a computer program, Head Sprout, that you saw lots of success. And the reason that you saw the success is because you couldn't go on unless you were successful with the prior lessons. It wouldn't allow you to go on. And then you talked about you like things that work at scale, right? That you can't scale what you can't afford. That was in this article. David Dow said that you can't scale what you can't afford. So I'm just going to stop you right there, Judy. So now you work in an area where this school could never, these kids could never be able to go to a private school like the one mentioned in this article and, benefit from that. We need solutions that are affordable and that could work for lots of kids, many of whom live in poverty. And so, have you seen anything that is like what John is talking about? So, Head Sprout, he said, doesn't exist anymore, or at least it's not, out in the public anymore. But he saw success with that. Have you seen any type of computer program where you saw that could work very well at this point in time?
So, tell me a little bit more. So that Head Start, what was Head Sprout program? It had a person, or it was just totally a digital program?
The way it worked is you could print off a book. You printed your own little books that were whatever you guys call them in the business to take you from early phonics to early reading. And you could only do one lesson a day.
And who was doing the instruction, though?
It was all online.
No teacher. It was
No
all
teacher.
like an automated
You did it
system.
at home. You just looked over your kid's shoulder and looked at it. And
then,
like I said, the guy who invented it was a behavioral psychologist whose job at Apple was to write the directions so anybody could get it out of the box and working in 20 minutes.
And then and I know Faith asked me a question, but I just want clarity so that I could answer appropriately. And what happened to this? And wait, two questions. So how long did it take to get your child to read well using that?
I believe it's 100 lessons.
100 lessons. And why is it gone if it was so effective? Where did it go?
Well, the guy sold it. And my experience has been anytime you have an autonomous, domain-specific automated tool that works, educators find some way to kill that sucker as fast as they can.
Why? Why?
Yeah.
Because they're afraid they don't understand that it's a way to save them time and make them more efficient. It's not a threat.
Right. All right. So now I'll go back to, now that I have a better understanding, I'll go back to Faith's question. So what am I seeing in the schools? I saw for a while during COVID, I saw a program that was called Amira. I didn't like it. It was a robot. It was the early stages of AI, and it was a supposedly teaching kids how to read. I thought I could do a much better job than that robot, but it was the very early stages of AI. I think the problem with that was like, it was one of the first ones that came out in New York City, and people just sometimes will buy whatever's cool or what comes as a package rather than thinking about what's best for kids. So that came in and out of style very quickly. Maybe some people are still using it. What I see most in schools now is there's not enough manpower. There's still a decent amount of kids that are struggling. Scheduling is very hard. Like, even if you have a couple of good interventionists in the building, teachers could be absent and they're pulled for coverages in certain places and so forth. So, and then you have to figure out, okay, there's tier 1, but then there's also the tier 2 kids, and then there's the tier 3 kids. And then sometimes you have to make really hard choices. Who am I seeing? When am I seeing them? How often am I seeing them? And unfortunately, the reality of most educational systems is some kids get lost in the dark. And the parents that maybe don't fight hard enough, sometimes kids can unfortunately not get the proper attention. So I'm seeing a lot of schools now are getting tutoring services. I don't know, like how qualified they are. Sometimes they say they're OG trained or in Gillingham trained. I see programs like Brain Trust and high impact tutoring and so forth. But at the end, and a lot of those programs are virtual, so they're not like AI. They're more of like somebody's working with the kids. But those programs are hard because you have to still manage, because you don't know if you don't manage it and monitor the data. Even my own data, it's moving, but I think it's moving because I'm in the building micromanaging, looking at that data. But then how do I also make time to monitor that data? Who's holding those people that are not even in the building accountable? I think that schools still have a lot of work to do in figuring out the efficiency. But like Faith said before, in this article, they mentioned a very, expensive program. My students can't afford that. And unfortunately, the way school systems are designed is the parents that end up being able to sometimes afford those programs are the ones that end up suing school systems because the school system totally failed their child and they have to go nuts to save their child's life. And a lot of parents don't even know that, there's different options on the table, so
I'm gonna step in. So what I'm hearing Judy say is that from what she saw, it really wasn't a great option for the computer, and the manpower is not really there, and you have all these kids who struggle. So that brings us back to the article right now. So in this article, they were saying that this particular school had an unbelievable high success rate, unbelievably high success rate. And it wasn't with a program, it wasn't with AI, it was clearly very skilled teaching. And they said they used a morphological approach. And we know that morphology is very important. We've had episodes on morphology. We had Pete Bowers on. We had Sue Hegland on. We know morphology is important, but it's in the article, it seemed to say that the person running the school, did not believe in phonics, and that phonics wasn't used. What are some of your thoughts, John, about the head of the school, this dyslexia school, saying that he didn't use phonics, they just used morphology and they get the success?
Oh, and one more thing, we had Danielle Kohlenbrander on that.
That's right, and Danielle Kohlenbrander as well. Sorry, Danielle, but yeah, we did a lot of episodes on morphology, so we are big fans of it, but we still believe phonics is important. What are your thoughts, John?
Stanis, I tell everybody, I wouldn't let you teach reading until you can explain Stanislaus Dehaene's work and watch this video. We know every human decodes every word first, regardless of fluency. So telling me you didn't teach phonics, show me the video. because there's something going on there that you're teaching phonics. And I mean, I think right down to the part of your brain is the same, whether you're Chinese, it's the same neurological function. And my understanding of reading difficulties for a lot of people is either by whatever their neurology screwed up and that the right brain is doing more than it should and you can't decode. And one of the things you run into with things like 3Qing is you create a bad neurological pathway which prevents the kid from ever learning to read. So I'm sure the school is wonderful. I'm sure it does a great job. I don't care because it's not scalable and I don't have any evidence of what they're actually doing. The problem with a lot of these people is they say, yeah, I'm great. Well, show me the money.
Yeah, well,
bingo, John, bingo. He said, show me the money. That's exactly how I feel at work all the time. When people will say, oh, that teacher's so great. Okay, show me the data. Show me the data. Are you sure? How do you know? Just because the person's nice, just because something looks nice or feels nice or sounds nice, show me the data. Go, John.
Also, maybe these kids already had phonics in a different place. So they probably didn't even start in this school. So somewhere along the way, these kids had to have had, especially if it's in the UK, because they have, oh, I'm getting balloons. They've had this type of phonics check for a long time. So I would think that they've had phonics. Now, maybe they did not have good phonics instruction. Maybe that was a reason to pull them and put them in a private school. But they probably had some phonics, and maybe in some way there is that letter sound connection being made, even if they're not using a phonics program. But I'm sure they are making connections and working with letter sound correspondences. That was what I would think. I don't know what your thoughts are about possibly coming from other schools having had phonics. Your thoughts?
Talking to Judy?
No, I'm talking to you, John.
Well, my thoughts are I'm a math guy, and it reminds me of when I meet people, I make this statement all the time. In Singapore, by the end of third grade, 85% of children can recite their multiplication tables from memory through 12s. In America, it's 15%. Why does that matter? Because if you can't have your math facts automatic, you're not going to learn algebra because it takes up more of your neurology. I've had so many people, including the infamous Joe Bowler at Stanford, say, well, I never did that, and I'm good at math. You're right. Next. It's the same problem. You're an exceptional anecdote, not evidence. And to say we shouldn't require every third grader by the end of third grade to be able to recite their multiplication tables through 12s is a disservice to, I don't know, 30 million third graders.
Well, Judy, you know what? I could tell you that I taught first grade, I taught third grade. When I was a third grade teacher, that was a must. We had to teach kids the multiplication tables, and we practiced with them. All right. So I hear what your thoughts are, because that was mandatory. And we had to spend a lot of time on cursive writing, and kids were all expected to use cursive writing. It wasn't just that we taught it for 5 minutes, but they actually had to use cursive writing and practice it the same way they had to practice their multiplication tables. And we really had to make sure they knew it. Could it be that, we're just not spending enough time doing some of the things that we know proves to be important? What is some of your thoughts about that, Judy?
So you brought back some great memories from my days when I was a second grade teacher. Of course, we spent a lot of time on math fluency and automaticity. And you know what? For some reason, in the last whatever decade or so, before structured literacy became popular now, which it is, thank God, it was like called drill and kill, and it was so negative. And I don't know why it was so negative. How do we get good at something if we don't have extensive practice? But to say the same, nothing's perfect right now either, because a lot of these programs that have come into the schools have pieces of evidence, but they're not fully evidence-based. They have pieces of research, but not fully aligned with the research. So again, I don't see a lot of practice, and I see a lot of jumping from thing to thing to thing. Like today you're doing this skill, tomorrow you're doing this skill, tomorrow you're doing the next day that skill. That's not great either. So why are we always in a state of confusion? And why are we not like following what the research and evidence says is best for kids? Why are we not giving kids practice on certain things, right? It takes time to get good at something. We
So
know fluency is important in math. We know fluency is important in literacy, but we don't give it enough time.
I agree with you. So what
Wait,
about
one more thing. And I think another thing that John said is very interesting. He mentioned there's other countries that are very successful, right? Why are we not digging deeper into seeing what other countries are doing and why they're so successful, right? And I myself, actually, I have to be honest, when I worked in Brooklyn, New York, as a public school teacher, I did 15 years in Brooklyn as a classroom teacher. I worked with a lot of Asian students in District 20 in Brooklyn. And that was a very high functioning district at that time. And let me tell you, those students did very well. Education was a very big priority. And additionally, I don't know if this is good or bad, but they even went to school on Saturdays, and they were doing what? Fluency drills in math and in literacy. So, maybe there are people that are doing something different that we need to look deeper at.
Well, this brings me to what Dr. Coral Ho said. With AI, it's relentless. Do you remember she used that word? AI is relentless. And if kids need a ton of practice, guess what? It doesn't get tired. A human, it's like, oh, we have to do that again. We did that 1,000 times. Could we do that another 1,000 times? Where, AI, that's what it is. It will adjust to the student, and it personalizes it, it customizes it so that it gives the kid enough practice. So, John, I want to ask you, in this article, it said that treating dyslexia is not the same as solving illiteracy. I absolutely love that line from the article. Treating dyslexia is not the same as solving illiteracy. Do you think AI could solve the illiteracy problem?
Well, the problem in literacy, we've been using the wrong tools. If you went back to using the right tools, 90% of kids, if not more, would learn to read and be on grade level. I also think, here's my question. How did Mississippi go from last to 22nd? Why? A pissed off, embarrassed billionaire put in a fund and did it, and nobody seems to want to know the details. I'm in California, and they're refusing. They're acting like they're doing that. And you should have Kimyana Burke on. She's one of the ladies in Mississippi who did it. And she'll tell you, because I sent her an email and said, how important was the exit exam? That you made sure they had to pass an exam to go to fourth grade. So it was critical, because everybody tries to dodge bullets. The bullet is the kid can't read. How do we know? Oh, now we know because there's a test. That was the other block in the foundation. We don't do that in America. It's like we don't, like the death of IES was good, but I wish they'd have kept the NAEP, and I wish they'd send every parent the NAEP quiz for their kids.
I want people to understand why you're saying that.
Because there's no way to know how your school or your kid is doing compared to anybody else in America, let alone the world. I'm so bad. If I was in charge of the Department of Education, You know what my first thing I do? You'll love this. Totally off topic, but it'll work. You can't start high school till 9 in the morning. You know why? They're all sleep deprived. The states that changed that, they had 70% fewer car accidents, far better academic performance, far less trouble in a classroom. It's
I'm with John. I fought that battle in Greenwich, Connecticut.
it's
John,
science, and they don't. It's child abuse under ADA. Some smart, we need smarter billionaire lawyers to sue under ADA. It's a disability. If you're sleep deprived, you're creating a disability. Next question.
But
Tell
you
me
know
parent
what
what
they'll
the
say? These high school kids have to work. That's the answer that you'll get. That the day starts earlier to give them a chance to work after school.
That's funny that was mentioned. That was a battle I won when my kid was in high school, my little one. We got it to start later. Now my kids graduated, they reverted back and they blame busing in town.
What it tells you is the educators either don't care about children's benefits at all, based on, I'm sorry, it's, or if you read the book, read Why We Sleep from the guy at Berkeley. I'll think of his name in a minute. It's definitive evidence. It's every piece of evidence there is. Sleep deprivation is the #1 cause of car wrecks. It's a huge issue, and we create it in high school students and then wonder why we have issues. Between cell phones and sleep deprivation, I'm amazed to learn anything. You know, and
Faith, I want to mention something. On the episode with Coral, there was something powerful that came out of it. It was a thought that was discussed. When teachers lead, AI becomes a powerful partner, not a replacement. And I think that's the key thing that a lot of people aren't thinking about. It's not going to replace teachers. We're always going to need teachers in the classroom. We're always going to need that human connection and conversations. And school is not going to disappear, but we need to, I really feel we have to start embracing AI and technology. It's made my life a lot better. I'm way more efficient. And I want to show you something. So there's a trend going on in my school right now. And it's kind of funny, but it shows how much AI is getting to know me and how it's accurate. So if you type this into your chat GPT, you write, describe me based on all our chats and make it catchy. Look what it wrote about me. Judy Boxner, the no BS literacy queen, host of the Literacy View, breaker of boring PDs, slayer of fluff, and fearless champion of structured literacy that actually works. You're a straight talker with a sharp eye for what kids really need. Rich content, real comprehension, and zero tolerance for BS. I'm not going to read more but the point is, we have to embrace technology. Things are changing. Faith has been saying it for about a year. Education might look very different in 5 years. And things that we're uncomfortable with now, we might get very comfortable with. And the truth of the matter is, education is an equity issue. And some of our kids are getting lost. No matter how many people are fighting for them, like Faith, myself, every single day. I live in a wealthy area. I go to a poor district. I'm fighting for those kids, but a lot of kids are still suffering. And unless we do something drastically different, we're not going to save the lives that we need to save. And it's an emergency that we get something right this time. I really feel strongly, because even though I fought my butt off to shift outcomes in my building, and so did my teachers, there's still kids that are struggling. How do we make sure that we reach those kids?
Well, you know what? I think that there are teachers everywhere feeling exactly the way you do, that they work hard and they just don't know what else to do. I think that, some of it could be what they're asked to teach. Some of it could be that they just have so many other responsibilities that they don't have enough time to dedicate to, what is most important. And it's hard for them to individualize, which again brings us back to solutions. If we have some solutions now Why are people fighting it? Why are people so down on it? I understand being a little skeptical, but it does seem to me that it's about the adults and not the children. That's the only answer I could think of. John, in this article, they mentioned the Michaelis School, and they compared the Michaelis School to the dyslexia private school. What was it called? It was Dr. Neville Brown's school, Maple Hayes Hall. So it was Maple Hayes Hall, and he was comparing it to the Michaelis School. And the Michaelis School turned around kids. All of them, I think, are kids living in poverty, and they had strict, behavioral demands that they had to come to school, act a certain way. They run a really, tight ship there, and they use, I'm sure, evidence-based instruction, and they get great results. What are some of your thoughts about looking at those two schools? And does AI fit into either one? Or, should we just take a look at what they're doing and try to come up with best practices without going to AI? What are some of your thoughts?
You need to do both. When Kip got going, I used to have email conversations because I accused Kip of cloning the Japanese school system and just calling it something else, because that's how that's done there. And then Eva Moskowitz has a very structured program with lots of kids in the classroom. So not lots, but 35 kids like everybody else in the world, so she can pay her teachers more. But the reality is, the key is time. Classroom time is sacred. We treat it like it's not. You only have so many minutes to execute what you need to do. What AI can do, it can correct all those math worksheets automatically. It can take and fix the spelling and grammar errors in a paper. It can send out an automated email diary to every parent or text saying, here's how your kid did, here's what the homework is, please text me back. According to Saul Kahn, the last interview I saw with, they figure that AI is going to save them 5 hours a week minimum of admin time so the teacher can spend more time in the classroom. So you combine that with a more structured, systematic approach, and you have a system that works far better than what we have now. I have Japanese friends who've taught in Japan and America, and they describe the Japanese classroom as like a ballet, and the American classroom is like a hockey game, because it's just not flowing, because there's the bells ring, there's distractions, we allow kids to act out. The materials, with your last guy on, I liked him a lot, but he talked about how textbook makers shove a pile of stuff in there. Well, what are you supposed to use? It's not discrete, systematic program that works to teach a lesson. In Japan, lesson study, the teachers incrementally improve each lesson over 4 years. They've been doing that since '78. You think those lessons are really well built and executed? Yeah. We need something like that. And guess what? AI can do that too. You feed it best lessons, it'll tell you what it thinks will work, and then you can decide whether it does or not.
This is very interesting.
It's very interesting. So let's think about this. So John mentioned that that you need to have something that is extremely explicit. We know that that's evidence-based, explicit instruction, that the teacher manuals need to really make it so that the teacher knows exactly what to do, so that it could be standardized across all classrooms.
You need to have the teacher be able to react to the kids. You can't be scripted, but you need to understand what has worked. The classic one in Japan is they tell you to let the kids struggle more. We don't like to have kids struggle. We don't understand why struggle is good. It's how your brain functions. It's how you learn. But we want to cut them off and give them an answer. They tell you exactly you should let them struggle longer for this.
Or we call the same kid over and over again in the class that has the answer just because it's comfortable to do that.
So there's things they know that work based on cognitive science. Ask Daniel Huberman, ask all these guys who are cognitive scientists, and teachers don't know that stuff. They should.
All right, but I got to play devil's advocate a little bit, okay? I can, here I'm going to show you. So I'm still, sometimes I'm a little old school depending on the day. So I love AI, but I still made a good old fashioned data binder, okay? I don't know if you could see it that well, but I put all my Acadians data in a binder and I carried it home. Now, I could sit and analyze it with a pen and paper. I could sit and talk about my data and look at it and talk to ChatGPT with my data. I could actually take a screenshot of the data and it will analyze it in 2 seconds. Am I going to do as an effective process if I'm going to let ChatGPT analyze it and then analyze the results? Or do you think it's still worth me sitting there looking at it? I think there's still a benefit in me sitting and talking to ChatGPT, because then my brain is working, my brain is looking at the charts, my brain is thinking. Like, when do we know if we're pushing too much? Because listen, it's very easy, right? I could take a picture of the data of the class data, and in 2 seconds, ChatGPT will tell me everything about that data, and I could prompt it more and it's going to tell me more. And it could even give me next steps. But when is it too much? When is it going too far?
Well, the problem with ChatGPT is it doesn't think. It's an iterative mathematical process of the likely things you need to say next. As long as my contention, as long as it's domain specific to what you're doing, it's probably okay, and it will get better. It's not that good now. It makes plenty of mistakes.
John,
Of course. No, but my point, wait, I want
John, wait a minute. Wait, I just want to stop because John mentioned a term, domain specific. Now, I know what you mean by that, John, but not everybody listening understands that term. What do you mean by domain specific so that people can follow the conversation?
Yeah, it's limited to a very discrete area of learning, like multiplication or whatever the reading parts you're doing. And because that way, it's the whole problem with ChatGPT and all those things that they hallucinate. It's not really a hallucination. It's just they took all the data off the internet, and half of it's crap. And the logical
I don't know, but John, I'm going to tell you, I've done it and I've played with it and I've cross-checked it with a lot of the data analysis I've done, and it's been pretty good, especially if you prompt it really specifically. So I want to go back to my question, and maybe either Faith or John can answer it. Faith, what do you think? Is it pushing it too hard that I'm going to have ChatGPT analyze the data? Or do you think there's still a value in, like, say, forget about it, I'm going to take the time, I'm going to talk to the robot? There's just so many things that you could do. How do you know what's the best approach? What do you think, Faith?
All right, so I think there's always value in getting into something and doing it yourself. And once you understand everything, the ins and outs, then you could take shortcuts. I don't think that you could start off with a shortcut and then have the person really understand and interpret what they're looking at without knowing something deeply. So I'll give you an example. When I went for my Orton Gillingham training, we had to make up all the little cards for the box. We had a sound box, and we had to do all our own. We had to draw the pictures. We had to write this out. And I said, wait a minute, I could go online and buy sound cards. Why do I have to make this up and put it in an index box and write all this out? And the instructor at the time says, because that's how you're going to learn it. If by actually getting down and dirty and making your own sound cards and learning what each one is and organizing it in the way that I was told and rubber banding it by all the different types, I started to learn it deeply. Then guess what? I wanted it to look a little bit nicer and neater. I ended up buying the Sans sound cards for my students. But there was value in actually doing
And,
it.
and I agree with you, but I could do this in my sleep already. I've been doing this for a long time. But like for my teachers, maybe it's the wrong approach, right? So I guess your point is that depends on your audience. I still think even me though, with all my years of experience, sometimes I just think it's more powerful, and I think that schools should still, do that data analysis. I don't know. It's just hard because technology is moving fast, and I bet we don't even realize how fast it is moving. And I think some people have told me that it's not even like fully, like we don't fully know how much is available to us right now. It's not even being told to us how much technology could do. It's probably able to do way more than we even realize at the moment.
And it's going to keep getting better and better. And we'll be able to do more. And in 5 years, everything's going to look completely different. So, John, let's talk about what you would, after seeing and talking about what we've been discussing, what would be your recommendations? You're somebody who is a consultant. What would be your recommendations for success if you had the money and the support and you could build your ideal school environment? What would you choose to do? AI, no AI, morphology, phonics? What exactly would you have for the teachers? What do you think?
Well, a couple of quotes came to mind while you were talking. One was from my favorite author, William Gibson, science fi. He invented the word cyberspace. The future is already here, just not evenly distributed. And Liping Ma, the famous Chinese math professor at Berkeley who wrote Teaching and Understanding Elementary Math, you can only teach anything to the level that you understand it. So Judy understands it, so she can use AI much more efficiently than somebody who's just starting, because her bullshit meter will smell stuff that doesn't look right. So what you get with my classroom of the future is die solves and head sprouts and automating the correction of most papers, but you're still the teacher. You're responsible for the results. So you have to build the system that way. But what I just did is saved you so much time and increased the accuracy of your measurement and the reporting systems. But remember, the increase in administrative staff since 2000 has been 75%, teachers 12%, and 8% decline in enrollment. There's a whole lot of admin people who, in my opinion, are going to be the ones that are eliminated by AI. Because a lot of what they do is not classroom instruction specific. And that's the heart of the matter.
And they are the ones, wait, I'm going to stop you there. That is such an interesting, scary point. So what you're saying is the teachers are necessary, but some mandatory, necessary, but some of the top heavy administrators, central office, building, those types of positions could possibly be replaced with AI. Is that correct? Or at least a lot of their duties. So, and they're the ones who are responsible for getting AI in. So, do you think that maybe they would put the axe that, and say, forget it, we don't want this, maybe because they're fearful of their own jobs?
Well, look at it this way. The pandemic forced a whole bunch of parents to watch Zoom schools. It's so much easier to homeschool now than ever. AI is going to make it significantly easier to homeschool if you're not getting more out of a public school. The administrators are going to be committing ritual seppuku if they don't adopt these systems, because charter schools will, and some private schools will, most won't, and parents will. That's the problem, is they're standing there looking in the face of a tidal wave of change driven by, my opinion, it's just Moore's law. computing power doubles every 18 months and gets half the cost. That's all AI is. At this point, it's not really judgment. It's just a math against problems and domain specific things like Judy. You really understand that domain, AI can make you so much more efficient and validate your hunches in some ways. But you got to be careful. I forget the word. It's a probabilistic tape recorder. That's what somebody called AI. I love that because basically that's a nice description. It recorded everything and it does the math.
It's kind of crazy. I was telling Faith on another episode, it even listens to kids read and provides kids feedback. If you're going to give specific, like if a teacher doesn't have time to listen to everybody in the class read, you press a button and you say, okay, use a cadence or use, dibbles and monitor it for accuracy and fluency. And a kid presses a button, they could read a passage and it scores it. There's just so much great things coming. But my only concern is like going back to what I said earlier in the episode, like I saw that program Amira, and that was AI or whatever in the early stages. So it's going to get better and better, and sometimes it's not. Some things kind of still suck. So I think we still have to be cautious about what we're putting in front of kids. And you know what? Maybe the data for it is great. So I shouldn't say that, right? That's my opinion. And our show is not really about opinions. It's more about data. But my point is, we still have to monitor the data. That just because, we're using something or it's AI doesn't mean everything's great. And that's why I'm really proud of the Literacy View, right? We're introducing new things. We just spoke to somebody in India that we're going to release that episode soon. She says she has something, and it's not AI generated, but she says that she has something that could teach kids how to read in 45 days. Now that's amazing, right? Some people might say BS, not possible. But I think the point is we have to remain open-minded. And then, we presented Dissolve on our show, right? We want to be cutting edge. We want to present things. Some people said snake oil, not possible. But how do you know? There's studies being done.
So I'm going to go with what Judy just said. John, what do you say about the naysayers calling some of this snake oil? We were kind of grilled over this, bringing this on. What are some of your thoughts and what would be some of the responses perhaps that we should be saying? Because a lot of people felt that it was too early to be able to say for sure that this is something that should be used. What are your thoughts about that?
You just had your Joe Rogan moment, people yelling at you, like, here's the real world. America's public education system is failing miserably. It's because the reading programs we decided to use caused neurological harm in a number of cases. And the idea that Dissolve doesn't work, will shut up and drive, test it. I mean, it's least expensive, most discreet way to do it. If your school district doesn't have the money, there's something wrong with your school district. You can't spend 10 grand testing 10 kids on Dissolve. Where you got Orton Gillingham, 8-9 grand with no real, the accountability system's less. So it's the normal response from people who are afraid of what's going to happen, which I understand. It's just what they're going to do. And I would just go dig out more people like that. I wish it would, I doubt you can get him on, but Vibhu Mittal, who was the guy I talked about, who did Route 1, is now, this is 2011, the guy invented an online system that asks you more and more difficult questions about what you're reading. He's an IIT grad who went a PhD at computer science at SC. He did Google Translate. And because he was a 30-some-odd employee, he had plenty of money and retired because he had young kids. Brilliant guy. Understands AI as good as anybody on earth, right? So he can probably take on anybody who wants to show up, but he's a busy guy, multimillionaire. I think I'll send you his email. Maybe he'd come on, maybe he wouldn't. He's a fascinating guy. A funny subject, it would be off subject, but you guys should have somebody explain IIT to you. You know what IIT is? Institute of Technology. without IIT, Silicon Valley wouldn't exist. It's the most difficult universities on earth to get into. You have to take an
This
exam.
us when we had a conversation. Sorry, I said no,
Yeah.
but yes, you
You
did.
should dig into that one, and because America thinks it's got the best colleges in the world. Wrong. For engineering and math, and not so much. So we need to get less delusional and less arrogant and more focused on what's
John
best
has
for
let
the
out
kid.
the elephants in the room that nobody else is really talking. This is true. It's true. We're not facing the reality that we're not where we should be. And if we're not where we should be, I mean, on an optimistic note, I think that we are going in a good direction. I think schools are improving. I see that teachers are really passionate right now about structured literacy. I see more principals really involved. I see a lot more people invested in data. But I don't know. What do you think, Faith?
I
Are
think
you optimistic?
I am optimistic, but I do think that, look, I just posted about a child I tutored a number of years ago who's now going into high school, probably one of the most profoundly dyslexic children I've ever worked with. Really, um, he really struggled. And now, guess what? Going into high school, this kid won the English award in 8th grade. And it really is about hard work, consistent practice, and an attitude that anything is possible if you work at it and you have the right instruction. And that was my post today. So, why am I bringing that up? I think that we have to realize that it's not just about a curriculum, which is important. That is important. But I do think we are kind of going on this path where, we talked about often background knowledge and a knowledge building curriculum, which of course kids need knowledge. But I can assure you that I did not use a knowledge building curriculum to get this profoundly dyslexic child to read. I could assure you.
You're gonna piss some people off, Faith. I already know people are gonna get pissed
I don't
off.
care. I don't care. I'm telling the truth. And so the issue really is this child came from a home where he was being given lots of knowledge building and trips and all that kind of stuff. So, yes, we would call that a privileged household, but that wasn't his issue. He needed to learn how to read. And then he was able to access all different types of books. He's writing poetry now and reading novels. And he feels such pride that he's going to high school and he won this English award. And I just want to say, when you say, am I optimistic? I think we have all the right tools, but I do feel that people have their priorities mixed up a little bit, and we could be going in the wrong direction. Are people going to be pissed off that I said that? Oh, well, I'm telling
I'm
you.
going to challenge you, though. I don't think we have all the right tools. I think we've been sold another story, and that we rush to give people tools that may have not been.
No, I'm not talking about what they got in the schools, Judy. I think they got the wrong things in because they were in a rush. But I'm saying the tools are out there. Like John said, we know what works. The tools are out there.
Well, what do we do if the teachers aren't being given the right tools right now? That's the problem.
It's a shame. It is a shame that they're not being given the right information, the right tools, because I do believe it's out there. When John mentioned Head Sprout, and we've had that I knew about Head Sprout. It's been around forever. And we know certain things work. And I do think that if we want these kids to truly be able to learn how to read, we have to prioritize language, oral language, and being able to lift the words up off the page. And they could have knowledge being built in social studies and science. We should have that in schools. Kids need to learn about
and I read aloud. And it's funny, Faith, I posted, I think it was a DRP or a test or a report card from 39 years ago. My AP shared her report card in New York City. We were doing what matters. It said structured analysis of words. It said vocabulary on it. Anybody who looks on the Literacy View Facebook page, it said all of that good stuff. So we knew it was working. We knew a generation did very well, but somehow we got it wrong, and now we're starting all over again. I know we speak about this on every episode, but I still don't understand. Didn't we have data to support that we were doing okay at some time? Can you clear that up for me?
That could be another episode, Judy.
But
The answer is no.
We did not.
We've never had good data in America nationally because we're allergic to national data unless it's
Never had good data, not even in the 1980s when I was growing up. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure, because NAEP wasn't mandatory. So how did you know what state was doing what? It wasn't mandatory until Bush. So the only national measure, NAEP, wasn't mandatory. That's what she.
So America has never had clear and consistent data that we're doing great in terms of education.
No, every time we do an international comparison, we get our ass kicked because we don't have national standards. Blame Ben Franklin. We didn't include it in the Constitution.
Shoot. Faith, am I supposed to be happy tonight, sad tonight? How am I supposed to be feeling right now?
I think
it's getting better, and that we know how bad things are, and we have certain discrete things that we know work. We have people like you who have an audience to talk to. You got a couple of gazillion pissed off parents, thanks to the pandemic, who don't trust anything coming out of the mouth of a state superintendent, unless it's Mississippi or a few places that have actually changed things.
Now, do you think it's harder to have good data in the United States because we have so many people coming from different countries that are just learning the language, and that's what might be affecting our data as well?
No, they don't know how to collect it. They don't want to collect it. They don't want to be held accountable.
Bingo.
The state tests are not fungible.
Wow, Faith and
Bingo.
John.
They don't want to be accountable. We talked about that before. Anytime that people feel threatened, they don't want to really know. It's better to live in the dark. They don't want to know. And this way they can't be blamed for something. That's the truth.
Can I ask John one more question? I know that we're wrapping up. John.
Yes.
So right now they moved to testing kids for state assessments as early as in 3rd grade. Kids were taking ELA assessments on a computer, even writing essays on a computer. That was very concerning to me. How do you feel about it? Because some of these kids have trouble writing. They're still learning how to write with a pencil, and now they've been told to keyboard. Now, is that going to be the next excuse if the data doesn't look good? What do you think, John? I just want to hear your opinion. Kids are taking math and literacy state exams on computers.
I have issues with some of it because they tend to be multiple choice and it's hard. I personally think you should have an exit exam for 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade for reading and math, but you'd have to have a standard that made sense. And a lot of the standards I hear in states make no sense. And then exams, in my opinion, shouldn't be done on computer because as you know, it's a different part of your brain. It's just a different part of your brain. So you should be doing both, some combination. I get out, it's faster, for some but you need to use your hands. Like cursive writing, you can't cursive write. That's changing part of your left temporal lobe. I happen to think you need motor performance facilitates learning. We know that. That's why you have manipulators.
But picture like some of these kids are only 8 years old. So that concerns me also. And that comes back to why do we make decisions? Who's making the decisions? Why do we make those decisions? And is there research that's aligned to the decisions that we're making? And are we
It's
holding people accountable for those decisions? Why is it always the literacy view that has to call out all this BS? And it's hard being the literacy view, right, Faith? We take a lot of slack online, right? This, that, but we're truth seekers, and that's what we do. We got to ask these hard questions, because if we don't ask, the BS continues and nobody looks deeper into it, and it's hard. But it's very frustrating, because I feel like, John, you got me a little emotional, because you said something really sad, that we're not doing well, and that there's no data to support that we've ever done well. Although maybe somebody will write to us and say they have some data that we've done great, and I'll take it if it's true. But like why do we keep doing things that aren't helping children? Like, why?
because we keep parents in the dark about how high is up. My famous line is, how high is up? What is my kid supposed to know by Christmas of his second grade to read? How high is up? What math problems should be able to? How high is up? And no state that I know of provides parents with that information. You should know what your kid's supposed to know by Christmas, beginning of first grade, second. Do they hand it out? No. Why can't they hand it out? Don't they know? Is it a secret? What? I don't understand that. It's not expensive.
I think sometimes schools are afraid of handing things out, because they're afraid that parents are going to know that their kid is not performing well or something. And if kids aren't performing well, then schools are going to be held possibly accountable. And I think it goes back to what Faith said. It's the blame game. Nobody wants to take responsibility. And let's be honest, when things aren't going well, sometimes we need more resources or a change, and things cost money. And money is always an issue too, isn't it?
It's all, well, the issue is America spends, like healthcare, we spend more money on our public education system and get less for it than any country in the world, because it's designed that way. This is what happens when you have, lots of capitalism. Means if I can outmarket the other guy and sell you a piece of crap, I win, and the kid loses. And nobody knows what's going on unless you, thanks to Sold a Story, we know that. Think about this. We're in worse shape in math than we are in reading. And it's easier to teach math than it is reading. What you do is harder to do than teach math, because math, it's a language with perfect phonics from A to Z. So it should be easier to teach. And we screwed that up too. So yeah, don't get me started.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you a chance to call BS on something. So I want you to pretend you have your BS.
Your BS button is upside down. Turn it around, please.
Here. I'm going to press the BS button for you, John. And I want you to give us 5 BS things that you see and tell us what they are. Go ahead. Here it goes.
Class size reduction has helped. Guess what? We spend $100 billion a year on class size reduction, and we're in worse shape than we were. Whole language is an effective tool. Proven not to be. Sleep deprivation doesn't matter for children. Understanding the importance of what a kid has for breakfast is almost as important as sleep. Yes, it is. So, and I would argue that the teachers union is there to help teachers, not students.
Bam! I've said this. I said this in my book. I've said this numerous times. When people talk about this, I'm like, look, and I don't care, again, that's what it's designed to do. It's there to support the adults. Don't think for a minute this is about the kids. If it does help the kids and it's good for the teachers, fine, but that's not the priority. So we thank you for joining us for this no BS conversation about schools, private schools, the curriculum, how AI fits in. This was a great conversation. And this article really is something that I think everybody should read, because it really highlights kind of like What's going on here?
It's a wonderful synopsis of the issues in short order.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll in my book I wrote about my experience doing in education. I quote Albert Shanker, who I wish they'd resurrect, because he wouldn't put up with this crap from the teachers union. He'd be focused on what works. And other
Can you
countries,
tell everybody the name of your book again?
The Doom Loop: A Parent's Field Guide to Mitigating the Math Wars, Teacher Wars, and Reading Wars. It's
Let's put
my
that in the
experience
show
in
notes.
education. Yeah.
John, send it to us. We'll put it in the show notes for sure. Thank you
will.
so much for joining us.
Thanks
This was
for having me. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. This was a great conversation. And just a note about what Judy and I are doing. Summer is coming. It's here. I don't know exactly when we're releasing this episode, but if you want to get in touch with us for any type of work, you could email us at faithandjudy@gmail.com. And you could always visit our website, theliteracyview.com. Did I get that right, Judy?
You're perfect, Faith. No BS tonight. You're perfect.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great summer.
Thank you. You too.